meeting. This meeting is being audio and video recorded. If you please stand and join me in pledge to the flag.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is an application for a one-day Sunday entertainment license for Old Colony Hospice. They're doing a 5K walk on Main Street. Are you from the
Yes.
association?
Yep.
Do you want to just briefly describe what you're doing?
Sure. So every year we do a 5K fundraiser. Last year, obviously, we did virtual. But it didn't really happen, but we had it virtually. So this year we are trying to recoup funds by having it at our home offices at 321 Manley Street because we have a big parking lot, and the owner of the building said that was fine. So I'm just here to get permission because we do our paid advertising at WBOR. They're not sure their street team can come, but if they can, they'll do it for free for us, and they'll just like have a microphone and play music. It's only for about 2 hours. So we'll see if that's okay.
Does anyone have any questions?
No, sounds great.
Is there a fee with this one?
Yeah, so I would ask you to waive the fee of this.
Okay, is there a motion to approve and waive the fee?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thank you
That's
so
all.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you.
Accept the meeting minutes of April 7th for review.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And we have a meeting calendar. Adopt.
Yep.
These are the tentative meeting dates and other important dates, town hall closings.
Exactly.
Is everyone good to tentatively approve this list? We only do one meeting in July and August.
Oh, that's right.
Just for clarification, at this point, these meetings all need to be attended in person. Is that correct?
That's June 15th, all the restrictions are lifted, so that is entirely correct.
You could still participate though remotely, as long as two of us are here, one person can
Okay.
participate remotely.
Correct.
Okay, so is there a motion to approve this calendar?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we have a list of FY22 appointments. What we typically do is take this list and take it under advisement for 2 weeks, then approve it at the next meeting. There may be openings, if we can try to find people for those openings. Lauren, if you could send us a list of the open committees, and maybe post them again and try to see if we can get some people to fill those openings in 2 weeks. Any comments on this? Or is everyone good taking it under advisement for 2 weeks?
Great. Do you need to vote on that or just an agreement?
The bylaw study committee doesn't have anyone from the finance committee on there.
So there should be, so again, if we have to clean up, we'll clean it up, but
So who is this? Is it,
it should be Jan Fox.
are you still listed, Mary Ellen?
No, it was just removed entirely. It's the
Oh.
same people, just less me.
Okay.
We'll review it.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll address that in 2 weeks. Next, we have the ratification of 5 non-union contract amendments. These are contracts that had already been signed. These employees amended their contracts to take a 0% increase, and now after the town meeting vote, we are now making another amendment to include the 2% increase for next year. So is there a motion to ratify those contracts?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And similarly, for the next group, there are 6 of these, same thing, they were accepting a 0%, we are now giving them a 2%.
I have to make sure that I mention that I have to abstain, is that the correct word?
Recuse.
Recuse, with my husband Sean being the assistant DPW, I want to make sure it's clear that I'm recusing from his line. Could we vote on them individually?
We can do all but Sean's, I guess, if
Sure.
either one of you wants to make a motion for that.
For all but Sean, so moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
And is there a motion to ratify Sean's contract?
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'm recusing.
Okay. We have a contract for permitting software. So Mike White went out and we haven't entered into the agreement yet, but he worked with a contractor. I believe the COVID funds are paying for the implementation, which is how much, David?
If we go to page 85.
Of the contract.
30-something thousand?
Correct. It's about $35,000 up front, and then there's an annual fee of $91.50. As you know, I just got back from vacation yesterday, so I am hoping to be able to call them and renegotiate the terms. So I would either, one, ask you to table it until I can do that, or two, is it accepted as is? And obviously, if I can get it cheaper, then I will negotiate a cheaper price. I would just ask, I'm gonna just go like this for 1 second, right there. You will see each year thereafter is that if it does get approved and I cannot change the price, that you can see that that budget is gonna go up $91.50 per year as a result of this. Just so you know.
All right, I think this is great to have as a new addition to the building inspector's office. I know Denise, you've been asking for this for some time. Although I think that $9,000 is reasonable, I think it makes sense for David to try to negotiate better, or maybe if there's adjustments that can be made to the service agreement, license numbers or something along those lines, that we allow him to do that. So I think it makes sense to take a vote to approve the contract, allow up to that amount on the screen, but allow David to negotiate something lower if possible.
So I would second that motion. I think what they're showing there is probably their rack rate, what they give to everyone. The $9,000 seems high, but David's, I think David can have a good thorough conversation with them, and if it's,
So I will tell you that the pricing on this comes off the state bid list.
oh, it does.
It does. So
Okay.
we pulled multiple vendors. Mike did a nice job.
Yeah.
We pulled multiple vendors off the state bid list to match up what our needs and wants are, and obviously taking price into account. So this is off the state bid list. However, my guess is that the annual fee is not part of the state bid list, it's just the upfront costs.
Okay.
So we will get the $34,630 paid for as reimbursement for this year, and then FY23 is my guess is that we would start to see the annual fee, and that's really what I would target to try to reduce.
Okay, good.
Okay, so Denise, did you?
I made a second.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I
Move it. Is there a second?
made the
Second.
motion. Apologies.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And up next, we have site plan review from the planning board, the Lincoln Street project that we've all spent a decent amount of time on over the past few months. So this is our opportunity to send any comments we have to the planning board for them to consider. All right, any comments that anyone would like to send or ask them?
The traditional, which are lighting, noise. I think they already agreed to, or at least I believe they've agreed to, only use the entrance on 106 to enter the facility. I don't know if they've agreed to a left-hand turn only coming out of the facility.
Anything else?
What about sounds? It's not going to be 24 hours, right? There's going to be specific hours?
So their narrative is that they're asking for 24 hours. So,
We ask for them to be kind late at night or
Yes.
whatever the right verbiage is.
yeah, so I think that, in my opinion, I think that there could be, we could break this up into two areas, just because it's such a large project, is that we can send comments along that would be specific to the construction period, and then also send comments along specific to when they receive their certificate of occupancy. So for example, for construction, we don't want construction on a Sunday. We don't want construction at 4 o'clock in the morning. So maybe we should do is we should set hours that we think make sense for construction, and in days of construction, and then also for days of operation and hours for operation. I think we may want to do both.
Aren't
So I
there-
think the construction, everything I said pretty much stands as well. If they can use that
Yeah.
road on 24, on 106, to bring the trucks in and coming out of the site, just take a left turn.
And what about maintaining an overall agricultural field? Is that something that we want to incorporate at all as part of more of a strategic plan and the overall view? Like,
So I think what we could do is that we could say is if they could keep as much natural shrubbery up as possible, so that way it would provide some type of like natural fencing.
Yes.
We could certainly include that.
because it's very West Bridgewater. I mean, none of us really want to see it built up. Let's try to keep the aesthetic as much as possible with those sidewalks. What about signage? Do we say anything about that? I know that there are limited, we already have a bylaw about signs and flashing and whatnot, but is that something that we direct?
It is not, because under this, the planning board does the permitting and regulation. So you're making recommendations and they can make a decision on whether or not they want to use them or not.
Oh, okay,
So-
so we're just,
But again, if there is signage concerns, we just place them as part of the list. And then they go through and they make final decisions whether to include it or not.
When you mentioned 24 hours, what they want, you're talking about the, whoever leases or operates the building. Construction-wise, are there limited hours for construction?
They haven't mentioned it. We
Okay.
should dictate that as part of the site plan review. So the
Okay.
planning board should put that. And their 24 hours narrative was part of once they are operational. But again, I think that we should include language that says, you know, do we really, do people have to go in there after 11 o'clock at night? Do they have to be there before 6 a.m.? In person, I'd say 11 to 6, or maybe midnight to 6 or something. But, I mean, to me, I think that seems pretty reasonable. There, even though it's an industrial area, there are some residential properties there. And I don't think that's being an unfair request. Again, the planning board will make the final decision, but I think it's a reasonable request from our part.
we should reiterate, don't the police have noise? There's,
Sound ordinance?
right, so we should keep it consistent throughout.
Do we have a bylaw? for
So
sign?
we do not have a noise bylaw, but there is mass general laws in reference to just
Yeah.
traditional noise nuisance. I use the example all the time, somebody next to you is having a party, they get loud, you call the police, they come over and say you're disturbing the peace. So, so that's exactly what we could do, that it's just mass general laws, but we can ask them to reiterate the fact that to please keep the noise at the minimal,
From
and
the
for respect of the
neighbors.
neighbors.
Yeah.
Is there a timetable, David, on what will be occurring and when? Like, what's first?
Yeah. So they're hoping to be able to do two things at the same time. They want to start construction on the road and construction on the warehouse almost at the exact same time. So they don't want to lose any time on either one. They are running into some roadblocks. I received an email today because some of the poles for National Grid have to be moved. You may very well remember from East Street, East Center, National Grid is not going to, whether it's me make the call, you make the call, they make the call, they're going to move at their pace. So that's going to slow them down a little bit. We're still going to have to do easements and takings, as we discussed at town meeting. And there is a process to that. We've already started to solicit pricing for appraisal services. So those appraisal services will have to appraise them, then send out the memos and all that type of stuff. So it's going to be at least a couple of months, is my guess, before they can start construction. I am positive that he doesn't want to wait a couple of months, but I think that that's reasonable, that it's going to probably happen that way. The other thing is that he still can't do anything until his approval from the state. And the state meeting, granted it's only in 2 weeks, but the meeting's not for another 2 weeks. So he's really incurring real risk by doing anything prior to state approval. But to answer your question, I think he's going to attempt to do both at the same time.
So a couple months before we start seeing
Yeah, I mean, and the site plan review's gonna take, I'm gonna guess, especially since they'll enter their summer schedule as well. They'll look at it now, it'll probably take 1 or 2 meetings is my guess. So my guess is they're not gonna receive plan approval from the planning board until maybe July, if not August.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Anyone have any other items they'd like to send?
We still have other opportunities to, no, this is it.
So if you like the idea of limitation of hours, we could just tell me what the hours are so we can include them.
I would ask the police what they use for the noise. I want to say there's a specific time.
So,
I would say 10 to 6 a.m. during the week. If they plan to be open on the weekend.
I'm sure they do. I mean, it's a warehouse distribution, so we all get Amazon
And that's 24
on
hours.
Sundays now.
Yeah.
So I'm sure it's gonna be a 7-day operation. So if you want to propose 10 PM to 6 AM, those were the hours. And then we'll also say that please do whatever you can to mitigate for noise, because regardless of whether that's during hours or after hours, we don't want them to be loud.
True.
I think a little 11 o'clock is a little late on a weekday when you have a resident so close. But I don't know what you think.
Yeah.
What do you
Depends
think?
on the day in my house. Oh,
Yeah.
that's not.
I mean, it's really for me 9 o'clock. But
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't think any of that's really feasible for this type of industry. I mean, they're gonna get product delivered at 4 AM. I mean, realistically, like, it's just,
But what some companies will do is they'll have the trailer come in, park,
but then it's idling and even louder.
huh?
Then it's idling and it's even
Well,
louder.
yeah, it's winter
For
there.
a warehouse distribution center, it's an ideal spot right off the highway, so I would
Yeah.
expect it would be a 24-hour operation.
Yeah, it really has to be. I mean, I'm assuming their loading docks are in the back of the building, away from those three houses that are on Lincoln Street?
That is correct. I know that that's been the discussed topic, but again, that's something that we can include in the comments if the board would like to.
So,
swap
yeah,
it
I'd
up.
say that's more important than the hours, trying to ensure that the loading docks are as far away from those houses as possible.
Yeah.
Because
that's
realistically, I don't think the
really-
planning board would have them operate only until 10 PM or.
I will say 10 PM will be tough because, for example, and again, we all do Amazon at this
Yeah.
point, we all get the notices that it'll be delivered up to 10 PM.
Right.
So if they're delivering till 10, they still have to bring the trucks back and go into their personal cars.
Right.
So worst case is if they're still 30, 40, 50 minutes away from their hub, they're getting back at 11, maybe 11:30 by the time they're leaving. So, and I will say that in today's world, there is no doubt that it's a 24/7 business because people are ordering at 3 o'clock in the morning. And as soon as they order, somebody somewhere is taking it off a shelf.
So are we speculating that this is going to be a consumer products warehouse distribution, or do we know?
We do not know, but I think that that's a strong assumption. I do know that that's what he is marketed towards, but he's a businessman. I think anybody it's 350,000 square feet, so it's a large building for somebody to be, but if somebody else could use it, I know that he's not gonna have any objection to doing it somewhere else, but it's being built as a warehouse distribution building, so I would assume, again, I'm using Amazon, but it could be Wayfair, it could be, eBay, it could be anyone like that.
I think we should at least ask him to consider, limited hours.
Limited overnight hours, leave it
Yeah.
kind of broad.
Leave it broad, leave it 11 to 6. We're making a recommendation. The planning board can, they can say, no, we think that's unreasonable. Even though we asked, doesn't mean they're going to do it. But I think we should at least ask.
Okay, so I think I captured these. So lighting, sound, including natural or leaving natural shrubbery or adding shrubbery as needed to keep the aesthetic. Having the entrance from the Shell station and requiring left-hand turn upon exit onto Lincoln Street, and limited overnight operating hours, and loading dock design to be as distant from homes as possible.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next we have a letter from John Delano on This is a portion of the Scotland Street project, Co-Chesset Development, the 40B project. So they're looking to not give the town or the Conservation Commission land, but what is it, granting oversight? or-
Conservation restriction.
Okay, so the Conservation Commission would have authority over it and be able to do conservation projects on it, but would never own it, correct?
We would not own it, they would own it. I would say that the commission would not actually have oversight of it. However, it would just sit as conservation land and therefore in perpetuity could never be built on or developed.
Are there any questions or comments on this, or I think we should have, David asked that we have town council review it, so we can accept it pending town council review and edits if necessary.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We have a letter from the DPW superintendent. So there's a request for children at play signs in the Rising Sun development. So all these streets are part of Rising Sun. They're requesting 5 signs just in all residential area. I have no concerns with adding these signs.
Is that all the signs say?
Yes.
Children at
Yeah.
play? I didn't know if it was the same as the one on, that we just put up near Pebbles.
That's what Chris
Oh.
has sent over, so I'm
That's the picture.
Yeah.
Yep, it's the same one then.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the installation of these signs?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, public comment period. Does anyone have any comments?
So I have a comment about the water department. There is I believe it's a public meeting as far as personal attendance. I'm not sure if it's personal attendance or Zoom. But it is on Monday at 5 PM. So I would encourage anyone who is concerned about the water, which I think is just about everyone, to attend this meeting if possible so that they can hear right from the board and the water department superintendent as to what the numbers have been at which sites and what their plan is.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. Town administrator has a brief report.
Real quickly, COVID-19 update. We currently have 3 cases in town. Last week we had 8, the previous week we had 0, so 11 over 3 weeks is pretty good. Just a quick reminder to everybody that as of May 29th, all restrictions have expired and been lifted, so there is no more mask mandate, for example. The other thing to keep in mind, and the chairman alluded to it earlier, is that on June 15th, the governor's emergency order will expire. So the reason that's important to note is that we had the ability to do remote participation as a board prior to that, but there was many more restrictions than there was after this went into effect. So if the board ends up wanting to do remote participation in the future, as Anthony said, you have to have a quorum here. There's a couple of other restrictions, but it's easy enough to get around. But it's just not as liberal and as easy. I will say that the governor has submitted legislation to be able to amend that, because I think most people became pretty comfortable using technology. And let's face it, if you want to be able to participate as a board member from somewhere else in the world, you should have that flexibility now with technology. So we'll see as to whether or not that gets approved. Last thing also on that is that the state is actually turning off the registration website within the next week. The expectation is that almost everybody that wants to be vaccinated has been vaccinated. If you do still want to or need to be vaccinated, you'll be able to go to the website, but you will not be able to register through it. You will see that there are 900 locations now that you can get a vaccine. You would then contact that individual place, and because now supply has overwhelmed demand, you're able to just walk in and be able to get a vaccine. The next one, Senator Timilty called me or his secretary called me right before I went on vacation. They gave me a couple of hours to provide them what the budget priorities were for the town. So what I did was I quickly used the information that we have provided in the past. I told him that we were looking for money for the Matfield Street Route 28 traffic signal. And also we'd be looking for $25,000 to conduct a Chapter 40B research project. In addition to that, House Rep Michelle Dubois had also filed $150,000 for upgrades and improvements to the rail trail. I was unaware of it, but again, if we can get money, that's fantastic. It did not pass in the House's version. However, I did include that in my memo to Senator Timothy, because if the senator wants to put it back in, we get it, great. And the last is that I also added $20,000 for all updates to our conservation land in general. I placed this on the agenda because, one, I wanted to inform the board that I basically took your wishes from the past. But this has happened multiple years, and I get it, I understand, everybody's busy, things come up at last minute. But historically now, I give Senator Timothy's office a lot of credit because they always reach out during the budget season to say, what are your priorities? The negative is they literally call at noon and say, I need it by 4. So I'd rather be proactive this year. And so what I'm asking is that either now, or if you want to send me something, I don't think it's time sensitive, it takes a couple of weeks. But if you can let me know as to what your priorities would be that I can request, and that way at any time during the year, if the senator's office or the House Rep's office contacts me and they're looking for information, I will already have it done and I can send it off immediately. So.
I think the Matfield Street light should stay as a priority.
Sidewalks, #1 priority for me.
So although the we don't have control over the water department, it's an independent entity. I think we should put in a request for $2.5 million for a water treatment plant.
Will do. And if there's anything else, just send it to me, and I'll put it into a memo, and that way it'll always be ready. The last thing is that I signed off on Old Colony Hospice. You heard from her earlier. I was able to sign off on the road, but she was looking for an entertainment license, and that's why she was physically in front of me. Other than that, that's my report. Okay.
David, could you just circle back to the water department to see if that number's about right? I was just going off of what other towns have paid for a water treatment plant, but they might need infrastructure money too.
Okay.
Okay. With that being all, is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.